Imagine waking up to the sound of rain. Not a gentle shower against a bedroom window. There is no window, no roof, no waterproof jacket hanging beside the door, no weather app telling you the storm will end in 2 hours. Just clouds covering the sky, and rain falling directly onto the world around you. For you, rain is usually an inconvenience. You grab an umbrella, put on a jacket, maybe stay inside until it passes. But imagine living thousands of years ago. When rain began falling, you could not simply close the front door, because for most of human history, there was no front door. So what did ancient humans actually do when it rained? The answer depended on where you lived, what kind of shelter you had, and how heavy the rain was. Because rain itself was not always the problem. Staying wet was. Your first priority would have been shelter. And prehistoric humans were not simply wandering around without protection. They built shelters. They used caves and rock shelters. They constructed temporary structures from branches, wood, grass, leaves, bark, and animal hides. Some shelters were simple. Others could be surprisingly sophisticated. At sites across prehistoric Europe, archaeologists have found evidence of structures made from wood and other materials. These shelters could provide protection from wind, cold, and rain. But there was an important limitation. A shelter only worked if it was prepared properly. Rain could find gaps. Water could run through a poorly constructed roof. The ground could become muddy. And eventually, everything inside could become damp. So when rain arrived, your shelter suddenly became extremely valuable. You would probably spend more time inside it, and that changed the rhythm of your day. Normally, daylight was your working time. You could travel, hunt, gather plants, collect firewood, process food, make tools. But heavy rain could make many of these activities harder. Visibility dropped. Trails became muddy. Rivers became dangerous. Animals behaved differently. And the landscape itself could change. A stream that was easy to cross yesterday could become a rushing barrier today. So sometimes the smartest thing you could do was simply stay close to shelter. But staying inside created another problem. Fire. Fire was one of the most important technologies available to ancient humans. It provided warmth, light, a way to cook food, and during wet weather it became even more important. But rain and fire do not get along. Wet wood burns poorly. Damp fuel produces smoke instead of a strong flame. So keeping a fire alive during a storm required preparation. You needed dry fuel. That meant collecting and storing firewood before the rain arrived. Shelters may have been designed to keep some fuel protected from moisture. If the fire went out, restarting it in wet conditions could be difficult. And losing the fire meant losing warmth and the ability to cook. Imagine sitting inside a dark shelter while rain pounds against the roof. Smoke hangs in the air. The ground is damp. Your clothing is wet. And the only source of warmth is a small fire that you desperately need to keep alive. This is where another resource became important. Time. Rain could force you to slow down. And when humans were forced to stay in one place, they could use that time for activities that did not require traveling. You could repair tools, scrape hides, work on clothing, shape wood, prepare plant materials, and teach children. You could also communicate. Humans have always been social. A storm could bring everyone closer together simply because there was nowhere else to go. People could talk, share information, tell stories, teach skills, and strengthen relationships. We cannot know exactly what prehistoric people talked about during rainy days. But we know that information was extremely valuable in small human communities. Knowing where animals moved, where water could be found, which plants were safe, which places were dangerous, how to make a tool, how to track an animal. These were not useless conversations. They could directly affect survival. And children could learn by watching and listening. A rainy day might therefore become an unexpected classroom. But rain was not always something you could simply wait out. Sometimes it became dangerous. Heavy rainfall can cause flash floods. Rivers can rise rapidly. Rock shelters can become unstable or flooded. Mud can make movement difficult. And storms can bring lightning. Ancient humans had no weather radar, no flood warning system, no emergency alerts. They had to recognize environmental signals themselves. Dark clouds, strong winds, changes in animal behavior, rising water, and the sound of approaching storms. Over generations, people could learn which places were safe during heavy rain and which places should be avoided. This knowledge could become part of a community's survival strategy. And there was another challenge that rain created: cold. Being wet is uncomfortable today, but in a cold environment, staying wet can become dangerous. Water conducts heat away from the body much faster than dry air. So if you were already cold and your clothing became soaked, maintaining body temperature could become much harder. This was especially important during cold seasons. Imagine rain falling in a landscape where the temperature is close to freezing. Your shelter is your protection. Your fire is your heat source. Your clothing needs to keep you warm. And everything becomes more difficult when moisture gets inside. This is one reason prehistoric humans developed increasingly sophisticated clothing and shelter technologies. Animal skins and hides could provide insulation. Layer materials could help protect the body. Shelters could reduce exposure to wind and rain. And fire could provide a crucial source of warmth. But humans did not always need to escape the rain completely. Sometimes rain could actually help. Rain creates water. Plants need it. Animals depend on it. Freshwater sources can become easier to access. And after rainfall, certain foods could become more available. For hunter-gatherers, changes in the environment could affect where animals moved and where plants grew. So rain was not simply an enemy. It was part of the ecosystem that humans depended on. The same rain that made your day miserable could help produce the food you would need weeks or months later. This creates an interesting difference between ancient humans and modern humans. You might look outside and think, "Great, it's raining. I can't go anywhere." An ancient human might have had a different reaction. Rain could mean inconvenience, danger, cold, wet clothing, but it could also mean water, plants, animals, and eventually food. The key was adaptation. You could not control the weather, so you had to understand it. You learned where to build, when to travel, where to find shelter, how to protect your fire, which materials stayed dry, and which places became dangerous after heavy rain. You learned from experience, and you learned from other people. That knowledge could then be passed to the next generation. So imagine a rainy day thousands of years ago. The sky is dark. Rain is falling heavily. You are inside a shelter with other members of your group. Outside, the landscape is slowly changing. Water runs across the ground. The temperature drops. The fire crackles beside you. Someone is repairing a tool. Someone else is working on animal hide. A child watches closely. Another person adds dry wood to the fire. And for once, nobody is traveling. Nobody is hunting. Nobody is searching across the landscape. The storm has forced everyone to stop. But stopping does not mean doing nothing. You work. You repair. You prepare. You teach. You talk. You wait. And eventually, the rain becomes lighter. The clouds begin to separate. The world outside becomes visible again. The ground is wet. The air smells different. Streams are fuller. Plants are covered in water. And now the group can move again. For ancient humans, rain was not something you could escape with a button. It was a force of nature that could change your entire day. Sometimes it meant hiding from the storm. Sometimes it meant protecting a fire. Sometimes it meant repairing equipment inside a shelter. And sometimes it meant facing serious danger. But it also brought something humans could never live without: water. Rain shaped the landscape. It shaped plants and animals. And ultimately, it shaped the environments in which humans survived. So the next time you hear rain hitting your roof, imagine removing everything that makes modern life comfortable. No house. No heating. No waterproof clothing. No weather forecast. No dry supermarket. Just you, your group, a small fire, and whatever shelter you manage to build. Suddenly, a rainy day does not seem so simple. And perhaps that is the real lesson. Ancient humans did not survive because they could control nature. They survived because they learned how to live with it. If you enjoyed discovering what everyday life was really like for ancient humans, subscribe to Primal Questions. Because sometimes an ordinary question, "What did humans do when it rained?" reveals just how much survival depended on understanding the world around you.